riches are in the niches, right? People who are really, really good at what they do, those are the people that I want to invest with. And when you really look at the grand scheme of things, the time and the diligence that these people have put into being a master of their craft in that particular asset class, in order for me to be able to match that same degree of experience and knowledge.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Freedom Blueprint. I'm Adrienne Green, and today I'm really excited to have Erica Neal, my friend, here with us. Get ready for insights to help you scale, systemize, and create more freedom. And what's cool about Erica's story is, she started as an active investor and now she's really on the passive investing side. So I'm excited for her to share that journey, why it's been a great fit for her. And I'm sure there'll be lessons learned for you as well. And spoiler alert, she is an expert on using whole life for real estate investing. So if that's something that you've heard about at all, make sure to stay on for the whole episode so that you can learn her wisdom. Erica, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Adrienne. I'm excited to be here.
So, Erica, I know you've got a lot of background and experience with real estate investing. And what I'd really love for us to focus on is when you went from active investing to passive investing, because that's something that a lot of people struggle with when they make that choice.
Mm.
So, can you kind of share what that journey was for you and why you decided passive investing was a good fit?
Yes, good question. I agree. I think a lot of us feel like the only way to financial freedom is to be active. However, I started to realize, and I mean, I was underwriting deal over deal over deal over deal. This was, just a few years ago when markets really started to get competitive and people were buying up, and I'm in the DFW area. So obviously a very competitive market. So I was underwriting on an ongoing basis. I mean, hundreds of deals. And so I went from being able to find 10 to 1 in 15 that we could be competitive on to underwriting 100 deals and not seeing anything that we were really able to come in as far as what the whisper price was offering. In addition to that, obviously, I'm connected with a lot of other investors. So I was getting deals and other investment opportunities that were sent my way that I started to realize. I could invest in somebody else's deal and do no work and make just as much, if not more, than what my own deals really had to offer. And so, in addition to, I was not a full time active investor, I have my own business and life and things that I have going on outside of real estate. So, it was one of those things that I decided I was trying to, excuse me, like half ass two things instead of just whole ass one thing. And that's where I decided, you know what? I'm going to focus on building my business and focusing on that area of my life. And I still am passionate about real estate. So I'm like, you know what? I can still invest in real estate and make the return, but not have to put in all the time, effort, and energy that it takes to be an active because there's a lot that goes into it. So that's where I decided, you know what? I'm just going to focus on the passive for now and continue to build my business as I've been doing.
That is such a great story to share. I mean, so many people do have a lot going on. They have their full-time job, they have their families, they have their hobbies, and you don't want your real estate investing to become another job. So I love how you share that and that passive investing is a good fit. For people who are just new to passive investing, I would love for you to share like what strategies you chose and what your reasoning was for that. Like what kind of passive investing did you want to do?
So, multifamily obviously is a big area that a lot of people are familiar with, which I am in several of those deals. Just, housing is something I think as a whole, we're always going to have a need for. And the population growth in this market in particular has been explosive. So that was something I felt relatively comfortable with on the multifamily side. The same thing with self storage. I don't know that I will do self storage long term, but when I say long term, I'm talking like in 20 years, I don't see myself doing that. But over the next like 10 to 15, I see that being a very viable asset class just because the demographic that uses that, they're not moving, they're staying put, right? Or they're being put in, we see a lot of family members being needing some sort of long term care, right? Or going into nursing facilities. They don't want to get rid of their stuff. We all have family members that don't want to get rid of their stuff. I see that being a very viable asset class. Same thing on the RV parks. So, I have a lot of friends that travel, not to the extent that you and Harley do, but they still travel around the country and they're using RV parks, RV resorts. So I saw that as another viable asset class. And then another passive investment that I did, which I think a lot of people are going to have mixed emotions on this, is I actually went into a Bitcoin mine. So it was a private equity firm that there's a Bitcoin mine in West Texas that needed additional capital. Basically, they ran out of money. I had a relationship with this private equity firm. So we went in and helped save, reestablish, get back in there and flood in some money into this Bitcoin mine and allowed us to be a part of mining the Bitcoin and selling that and participating in the profit. So those are the different asset classes that I've been involved in. There's a few others that I'm interested in, but those have been the primary areas just because they're here, they're not going anywhere, and they have a consistency in the marketplace. So that was kind of what I was looking for in those investment opportunities.
And one of the things, first off, I love everything you shared about that. And one of the things I note about that is the cool thing about passive investing is it's a whole lot easier to be in multiple asset classes or multiple strategies because you don't need to be an expert in every aspect of it because you're not actually doing it yourself. Is that something that resonated with you or was a part of your journey?
Absolutely, right? And so specialist riches are in the niches, right? People who are really, really good at what they do, those are the people that I want to invest with. And when you really look at the grand scheme of things, the time and the diligence that these people have put into being a master of their craft in that particular asset class, in order for me to be able to match that same degree of experience and knowledge, I mean, I'm so far behind, right? I'm 10 to 15 years behind because they've been doing it for so long, or collectively as a group they've been doing it so long. So, yes, could I, as a GP or as an active investor, partner with other people? Absolutely. But again, I didn't have any desire to leave. I love my job. I love what I do. I love my business. I don't ever want to leave that. So, as a passive, I can be in multiple asset classes, take advantage of all the variety of market and industry and assets. But I need to become, as a passive investor, all I need to do is become a specialist at people trusting but verifying and really looking at the operator more than the asset. And so that's something that made it a little bit easier to diversify amongst multiple asset classes.
And you hit on another, I think, really good, like foundational philosophy for a lot of real estate investors, which is the importance of that operator, of the person more than maybe some other things, right? And that's something that new investors cannot understand or can struggle with. So when you are looking at the person, you're looking at that operator, what is important to you? What do you want to see in them?
For me, is track record. Have you executed a business plan that is in alignment with what you're trying to do right now? The good thing is real estate provides a lot of opportunity. The catch to that is sometimes that opportunity is oversold. And so we get a little bit excited and people might tend to, bite off more than they can chew. So although the opportunity is there, they may not have the expertise to actually execute, or they underestimate the workload or all of the caveats that are going to come with going through the business plan in totality. So I'm looking at your track record, looking at the team. But here's the thing about the team. The team is great. And I really think, power to the people, bringing everybody together is fantastic. But I need to understand on the team who is doing what and who is involved on a regular basis versus who's just bringing the money and signing on the loan, because those are not always the same thing, right? So who is actually going to be hands-on, boots on the ground, managing all the different aspects of the day-to-day or month-to-month basis, and what is their experience and background on that? Because like I said, we all have big expectations and we're looking for the opportunity, but being able to execute can sometimes, especially in this environment, right? Like it's a crazy uncharted territory. And so navigating this takes somebody with experience, and that's what I'm going to look for.
Right. We are not in the calm seas or the, like a rising tide that lifts all ships like we were for a while. Well, we've talked about some great, like big picture things with passive investing. What I'd love to do is let's get a little more micro and let's look at your first deal. So your first passive investment that you chose to do. What was it like and what did you learn from it over time?
Well, my first passive investment was a deal that it's in DFW, and it was with a larger group. I did feel more comfortable going into this deal because it was kind of coming back to the people and the experience. I knew the syndicators. I had developed a relationship and kind of, shaking hands, rubbing bellies at different networking events. So I was very comfortable with them. I also knew their background as far as like their experience in the real estate world and what all they brought to the table. I also felt comfortable with a lot of people that are investing passively want to see that the operators or the GPs are also putting money into the deal, right? They've got skin in the game. In this particular deal, the GP brought in a significant amount of capital. So I was excited about that. And the deal was planned to begin distributions within 6 months. So come in, flood this money, distributions cash flow within the first 6 months. That did not happen. So that was one of those things with, and now I'm still in this deal, and they actually just started doing distributions again. They started and then had to pause, and then they started them back up. So, it is taking a little bit longer than what we originally anticipated. However, what I've learned is there, in that experience with my first one, what's always promised is not going to happen. So if this is money that you're relying on, you need to make sure and realize this is an investment just like anything else. Real estate still has its risk. Also looking at the pro forma and figuring out what projections are the operators using to expect these types of returns, and are those expectations going to be realistic, right? Like, again, in DFW, we saw like double digit rent growth for 2 or 3 years. There's no way that's going to be able to be a consistent ongoing thing. So does the pro forma show realistic expectations for future increases on both the income and expenses? Because we've seen massive increases on the taxes and insurance side. So that was something that I started to realize, that the unthinkable can happen, right? These massive increases can happen. And we can also see rent decreases. So that was something that helped me realize, okay, this isn't always going to go according to plan. However, I've also seen a difference in this particular group that communicates on an ongoing basis. We get updates. Hey, here's what's going on. Here's where we are. We know we said this, but it's not going to happen. And here's why. Here's what we're doing to adjust. So that communication for me has been invaluable. And I appreciate that so much, especially with that being my first deal. I have invested in other deals since then that a couple of them have not communicated as thoroughly. So to see that dynamic just kind of helps me appreciate how valuable that communication is from the operators, and them acknowledging, hey, this isn't going to plan, but here's what we're doing. So it lets me know that they are actively working on it.
So any syndicators listening to this podcast, huge, huge tip. And I would echo, as a passive investor as well, exactly what Erica is saying. Communication can heal a lot of issues. Now, was that a multifamily investment?
Yes, it's a multifamily investment. It's actually a portfolio of two properties in the same town. So it was a pretty big portfolio.
Yeah. And I will say we have a multifamily syndication that we're invested in as well. Same thing. The distribution started, stopped. It's a tumultuous time for multifamily.
Oh my
So I
gosh.
get
Yeah.
it. All right. So that was a great deal walkthrough. And I know we talked about beforehand. Another thing I'd love for us to hit on that's kind of related is this idea that we want to, failure is inevitable, right? Like, unless we are staying in our comfort zone and only doing things that are safe and have, limited risk, so limited return, we're going to have some kind of failure, something, a ball that's going to drop. So, what I'd love for us to talk about is that failure in real estate and what you do when that happens. Because if you're playing big, if you're swinging for the fences, you're going to strike out sometimes. So, do you have a story about that with passive investing that you could share with us?
Yeah. So I love what you said. When we're swinging for the fences, we're going to have strikeouts sometimes. And I remember when I first got into the real estate investing world, I was told that, you're not a real estate investor until you lose money. And I was just like, that doesn't make sense. Like, how can you lose money in real estate, right? Because it's just this magic bullet, and it's or a silver bullet that, pierces everything. And so, yeah, actually, I did realize that that's not true. And so in this particular deal, there are a lot of hindsight's 2020, and I broke a lot of my own rules that I shouldn't have. And so in this particular deal, coming back to what I mentioned, the experience on the operator side was not there. The operators had been in multifamily for a while, and they had done some strong renovations and getting the property stabilized and things like that. However, this particular property, and going into it, we knew that it was a very low level, like probably a D class. This degree of rehab and lease up and all of that, this was an extreme level, and looking back, the operators did not have the experience to that degree. They had experienced some of it, but not that level. So that was flag number one. A red flag number two, the level of intensity that this was going to take on the turnover for this property. It was also not within, none of them lived locally. So this was a pretty good ways away from where the operators all lived. And so could they get to it within, a couple of hours of drive time? Yes, but it was over. And I was always kind of looking at it when I was doing GP stuff. Can I get to it within 1 to 2 hours? Okay, great. That's something that I can have a little bit more hands on with. This one was over that threshold. And so being outside of your everyday market creates that trouble of, being able to get there and manage and do so on an ongoing basis. But then also that creates a dynamic that it's in a different market. It's not the same market that you are in and that you have relationships in and that you have experience in and know the trends. So again, it's not just that being able to have hands on, but also understanding the market that particular asset's in. And then red flag number 4 was when we started to go down the path and look at, getting these things done and getting the property rehabbed and done over and over and over, we very, very quickly ran into issues. Like those problems started surfacing very early on. And so seeing that, we all think, oh, well, that's a little problem we can overcome. It's usually not one big problem. Small holes sink a great ship. And this was about 500 little pencil holes in the ship that eventually, very slowly, started to drag it down over time. So that doesn't mean that, moving forward, that I'm going to have a frenzy over every little thing that goes wrong. But when I start to see a consistent thread of problem, that needs to be my trigger of, hey, why are all these problems that seem unrelated? Why are all these problems happening regardless? Right. So those are the areas that, looking back, like I said, I broke my own rules. I trusted operators with that experience, went outside of my market, went outside of the time and the industry that I was used to. And then I also, I was already in the deal, but when I started to see all these holes start to surface, I should have seen the writing on the wall that we probably weren't going to make it out of this okay.
That's great, I guess, reflection back and seeing when you kind of compromise or say, "Oh, it's okay." Sometimes it's not, right? Now, what would you say, like, going forward? Like, have you so often when somebody has a failure like that, right? I say failure in quotes, right? Because we have so much emotion attached to the word failure. But when somebody has something like this where they lose money, it's easy for them to say, "Oh, real estate investing is a bad idea," and just get out of it entirely. So I'm curious about your mindset, your process of going through this and how it's affected your strategy going forward.
Absolutely. So I'm not one to, shy away from trying again. I think I have failed at many things throughout my life. However, when I've looked at that didn't go so well, looking back, I can see ways that when I tried it again and I did so with the added value of experience, the next time I was able to do it, I did it so much better. And so that goes with anything, even as simple as when we were kids learning to ride a bike. My daughter is 16 now. And so she started driving her truck and she actually had her first little whoopsie a couple of weeks ago. And thank God it was just her. She hit like a little pole or whatever, messed up her bumper. But, we talked through it like, okay, how do we make sure and prevent this from happening next time? So that doesn't mean that when she fell off her bike or I fell off my bike that I stopped. When she bumped something on her truck that she stopped driving. Same thing when we get into business. This isn't something where I made a couple of social media posts, but then nobody liked it. So I'm never going to do it again. I've come to realize that there's no way in life that we're ever going to be able to escape failure. So I might as well use it as a tool to my advantage. And so moving forward, looking at the investments and the opportunities that number one, I have reevaluated the projections and the expectations that I have on certain asset classes, i.e. multifamily. I think for the last 10 years, we have seen this massive multifamily investment wave. It really took off in that time period. But I don't see it again. I think it's a great asset class. I'm going to continue to invest in it. I don't think we're going to continue to see the returns in that particular industry like what we've been able to experience over the last 10 to 15 years. So I think realigning what the expectations are, number one, for the asset class and being realistic on what to expect based off of a 30 or 40-year history, not a 10-year history. Okay. So looking at realistic expectations. And then number two, again, just coming back to people. That's something where when I'm looking at who I'm investing with, and again, looking at their experience and also being a better judge on contributing to capital calls. I know everybody has different feelings on this, but I got some really good advice from an amazing operator in DFW. And whenever they were doing this capital call for this deal that I was in, I was talking to her. I'm like, what do you think about this? Like, what are the best measurements for a capital call? And she said, if you are contributing to a capital call, there needs to be an exact plan and an expected return specifically for that capital call. It's not a, hey, give it, we need a capital call just so we can pay these bills or just so we can do this. It's a, no, this capital call is going, this is the plan for it. And it's just like the original business plan for the original investment. This capital call is a new investment. What is it going into? What are you going to do with that? What is your expected return? What is your expected, business plan with this capital call? And she goes, if they cannot produce a plan for that, then they're just trying to rob Peter to save Paul, to pay Paul kind of thing. So that was something that moving forward with a capital call, I would be more diligent about looking about where it goes. And then also, I would say market is important, making sure that either I am or more importantly, the operators are familiar with and experienced and are relatively local to the market in which they're investing.
Wow, it sounds like you learned a lot from that experience, which
Oh, yeah.
I am so glad because when we have those pain points and we have, that money loss or that headache, it takes so much time and we really, as miserable as it is, the more lessons learned, the more we're getting from that, right? Investing in a new market, but struggling to find the right agent, I get it. And I've built a network of investor friendly real estate agents who understand what you need. Skip the guesswork and connect with the right agent today at adriennegreen.com/expert agent network. And I have the link for you in the show notes. So I'd like to pivot a little bit here, Erica, now, because I know that, we've talked a lot about the bank replacement strategy, whole life insurance, and that's your day job. So I'd love for you to explain to listeners and, a quick intro to that, right? Like, how does that play into real estate investing for people who aren't quite sure what that looks like?
Absolutely. So, with real estate investing, business, whatever it might be, most of us are building up a storage of cash or liquidity on the sidelines so that we have our what we call our opportunity fund ready to go into deals as those opportunities present themselves. The problem that we typically run into as investors is if we want money sitting on the sidelines, we usually keep it on like a bank account or a money market where it's safe and liquid, but there's no growth, right? We're losing money, especially in this inflationary environment. On the other side of the spectrum, we have investments we can put money into where we're hopefully going to get some growth. But the catch with an investment is it's not safe, right? All investments carry risk and it's not liquid. So if I invest in that deal or that, whatever it is, it's going to be tied up for 5, 7, 10 years or more. So we have this dynamic of if you want safety and liquidity, you have to sacrifice growth. And if you want growth, you have to sacrifice safety and liquidity. So it's either, put my money into an account, I need to use it within the next year or lock it up for 5, 7 or more years. So there's this middle ground, right? Well, what about money that I might need tomorrow, but I still need it to benefit me over the long run? So that's exactly where these whole life policies, the infinite banking concept comes in. And we call it the warehouse of wealth. It becomes your storehouse that you can create and build up your cash, use it as an opportunity fund, and it's going to grow guaranteed. It's going to earn dividends. It's going to outperform inflation, but you still have access to that cash at any time to go out and invest in a deal. So you can go into your whole life policy, your IBC policy, and say, hey, I want to take this cash out. You borrow against it and you go out into an investment. And the beauty is there's no giving up in one area. It's not an either or, it's a yes and. For example, if you have, let's say, 100,000 in your cash and you want to take out 70 to go invest in a deal, well, you take out that 70, you loan it out, right? You become the bank, you loan it out, invest that 70, and on that $70,000 loan, you're going to pay an interest on that loan. However, while that 70 is out invested and earning and getting you a rate of return, a good rate of return, hopefully, you're still earning compound interest and dividends on the full 100. So you're doing what Robert Kiyosaki says and giving $1 multiple jobs, giving yourself the ability to go invest, get a rate of return, but you are also continuing to earn inside. So you're increasing your returns, doing so on a tax-free basis. You have access to it, and there's a level of creditor and predator protection. So you have that asset protection built in as well. So it just fills in all of the gaps between traditional bank accounts and long-term investments. It fills in all that intermediary terms.
Love it. And guys, if you're listening and you're like, whoa, that was a lot. First off, Eric, I think you did a great job explaining a very difficult concept. And second, guys, just pause and go back a few minutes and listen to it again, right? Listen to it again. And it's going to start to click. It takes a while because this is a totally new concept if you haven't heard it before. Like I know I was there and I will say now we use it, we love it, it's amazing. So, Erica, what I would appreciate is let's walk through one specific example of how somebody could use it. Can you do that for me?
Absolutely. And like you said, Adrienne, it is different. And that's why I tell people it's not difficult, it's just different. So it takes a little bit of a mind shift. So, for example, if I want to invest passively in actually I have a good example here. I went into a new development, a single family new development project. I took a loan against my policy. So I went in, and I took it, I want to say a few years back. I took out about 70,000 and I bought land, and we had a contract with a builder, with a home builder who was building the homes. I took out a construction loan to fund that. I borrowed against my policy to buy the land and then built the house. And so we were planning on building the house. It was supposed to take about, 6 to 8 months per property. And then we would sell it, take the profits. I would pay the builder what he did, and I would keep the profit from the sale of the property. Well, in the midst of doing this new development, COVID hit. And so I know, right? I'm like really good at timing. So COVID hit and we had everything under the sun. We couldn't get permits, right? Because all the city offices are shut down. We couldn't get permits. And then there was the material shortages. And then we actually projected to spend about 38,000 on lumber per property, and lumber shot up. So we ended up spending over 75,000 per property. Yes. And then in addition to that, because of all of those, hurdles that we had to jump through, this project that was supposed to take about 6 months, the first one that we did took 13 months, and the second one that we did took 22 months. Forever. It was insane. But here's the beauty. And with new development, you're not getting cash flow. So I took a loan against my policy, and I was able to buy the land. And we had a really good relationship with the bank for the builder's loan, where I was only paying interest only. Okay. So in that process, I was able to take a loan against my policy. And because I wasn't getting cash flow, in fact, I was having to continue to take money out of my policy, and I would use it to either buy materials or pay the bank their interest only loan. I did not have to make a single policy loan payment for that entire time. So one of them was for 22 months. I kept using it, and I didn't make a single loan payment. However, what was happening inside is, even though I had the money out, it was continuing to earn. So I had 70 in one, and I think 75 or 80 in the other, like 150 grand that I had taken out, but I'm still earning interest on that 150 grand. And then the beauty of that is, so it actually ended up working out during that time. Obviously, housing prices shot up. I underwrote these properties. We were planning on selling them for like 148 to 150 a foot. We ended up selling them each, I think 190 and 195. So we ended up making money on the deal. It took a little bit longer, but the beauty of it was that I could continually use this cash in whatever manner that I wanted to, and not have to worry about paying that back whenever these projects were taking way longer than we expected, or probably longer than what they should have. So it was really, I don't know how to put a price on that, right? To be in control of what that money is doing and when, and also know I'm earning interest on it inside the policy, while I also know this deal is going to come to fruition. It's just going to take longer to expect than expected.
And I love all of that. Great, great example. And one of the things to show is like people think of, oh, I'm taking a loan from my whole life policy. It's really just like your own money, as if you took loan like money out of your bank. And so like you can partner that with a bank loan or something else like that, and really get a lot of leverage and a lot of return.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because it's not, people think, oh, if I become the bank, what if, do I have to only use this? No, like you can, if you want to only take a loan and fully fund it through your policy, you can. Or if you want to partner with traditional investing, again, it's not an either or, it's a yes and. You get to decide how that works. And honestly, a lot of lenders like to see these policies because they know they're guaranteed, they're easy to access, and they're creditor protected. So on my PFS, I was actually able to list, I have 4 different policies, and I was able to list all of them and the cash value as part of my liquidity and net worth. And lenders are like, yes, they love that. So it was one of those things that created a great partnership.
Love that. Erica, you have so much wisdom you're sharing with us today. It's amazing. And I am sad to say we have to wrap it up with our closing questions. I've edited them a little bit. And so I'm kind of going to throw Erica for a little bit of a curveball here. But guys, we have new closing questions, new and improved. So the first is, what is your go-to tool for managing operations?
So in my operations, in my business, I use a platform called Go High Level. I actually have a company that we ended up hiring that uses Go High Level, but they set it up and do all of that. So on the operations side, for me, that's huge. Before we had MailChimp, a CRM, Zapier, a Calendly, like we had all of these programs all over the place, and we connected them through that Zapier platform. I mean, anybody that's used that knows that it gets disconnected and all that. So now through this platform. The company is called YOLO Nerd, but it's a go high level platform that they set up for you. I know the name is so goofy, but everything is all built into one. And that is social media, calendar. I'm actually going to be launching a course here soon. So all of that's built into one platform, and it makes it so easy to just get in there and do everything all in one instead of having 75 different logins.
Yes, that is fabulous for that. So many people I know love Go High Level, and there's a ton of application for real estate investors there. All right,
Yes.
now our new question. I hope you have an answer ready, Erica. What's your one piece of advice you'd give to your younger self when you were starting out?
I do think about this all the time because, it's my younger self like was not always in the best position. However, all the benefits I get from that now, I'm like, would I go back and change that? No, like I want my younger self. I'm glad my younger self went through those troubles. But my advice is when you surround yourself, high tide raises all ships. Get in circles with people who are smarter than you, that make more money than you, that are more disciplined than you, everything that you want to be. Go ahead and get in those circles because, you are the average of the 5 people that you hang around. Nothing is more true. It doesn't matter about your education, doesn't matter how smart you are, doesn't matter how much money you have. You are never going to grow if you are around other people that are either, not to your level, they're below your level, or even at the same level. Get in rooms that make you uncomfortable and that make you feel like you have to elevate to the next better version of yourself. And that's going to become your new norm. Just get with more, you know, I don't know, I want to say better people, but people who have increased their, productivity to the next level that you want to get to. Get in those rooms and get uncomfortable.
Great advice. You knocked it out of the park. Thank you. And then finally, what is a book that has been transformational in your investing journey?
And the investment journey, oh my gosh. Traction by Gino Wickman is a good one. For my personal business, one thing, and this is for like my life philosophy, there's a book called Entrusted, and I can't remember who wrote it off the top of my head, but Entrusted is one of those books that talks about generational wealth, and they don't talk about it necessarily from a monetary standpoint, like, oh, hey, just leave your kids a big fat sack of cash and create trust fund brats. It actually talks about how to not do that. They don't just talk about money. They don't just talk about entity formation. They talk about the mindset and the everyday practices that families that are building generational wealth and how they prepare. And one of my favorite quotes is, most people think that estate planning and generational wealth is about preparing wealth for your family, and it's not. It should be about preparing your family for wealth. And that just completely changed the way that I talk to my kids and involve my kids, and my husband and I plan for what the next generations are going to look like. How can I create a ripple effect that even when I'm gone, what I've started is going to continue moving forward? And that for life overall has changed everything. But the Gino Whitman Traction book for business, I mean, fantastic.
Both great books. I love that. Thank you. And Erica, if somebody would like to get in contact with you, maybe they want to know more about infinite banking policies or just, to hear more of your story or connect or say thank you. What is the best way for them to do that?
So all of my social media across the board is the Erica Neal. I got advice to change it all to the same one. So the Erica Neal. And then if you want to just shoot me an email, it's Erica, Erica, at, it's long, but it's all spelled correctly, Infinity Investment, which is singular, strategies.com, infinityinvestmentstrategies.com. Just shoot me an email and I'd love to connect.
We will have all of that in the show notes as well to make it easy for you guys. And what an amazing conversation with Erica. If you loved today's episode, please take a minute to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with a fellow investor. Who do you know who could benefit from hearing Erica's wisdom, story, all of that? Your support helps us bring even more value packed episodes to you. So be sure to join us again next week for the next episode of the Freedom Blueprint.